Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Daily with Jay and Clay. We are glad you made it. We have some great information. I'm bringing a little bit of energy since Clay's tired, but wanted to really front load this video with some really important information that, quite frankly, a lot of folks don't talk about. We're going to dive into it a little bit for you. I'm going to let Clay kind of outline the direction we're going to go today, but I assure you that the information you're going to get from start to finish will absolutely not only help you if you need the help to get to that 100% permanent total, but it can also help your friends, your family members. Having the information allows you to help further the cause, right, of us helping each other. Many hands make light work. So with that, I'm going to send this over to Clay, let him outline what we're going to go through, and we're going to jump into it for you. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. And if you want to support the channel in other ways, you can do that by basically watching the video all the way through. That's the big thing. All right, go Clay.
All right, so we're going to start with, when does medication start to affect your VA disability? Some of those are good, some of those are bad. That's the first topic we're going to jump into. Then we're going to completely switch lanes and just talk about every single person that can actually help you file that VA disability claim, all the way from yourself all the way to an agent, and then other private companies and everyone in between that. And then we're going to talk about, when does the VA want their money back? We all know when you're in the military and you're overpaid on that first of the 15th, they will take that. Yeah, they will take that money back no matter what. The VA is the same way, okay? And there's some instances where the VA will, and it's not a they might, I'm telling you, they will recoup every single penny if you're overpaid, to include severance pay, which is something that not many people know until you're hit in the face with that, hey, you got your rating, you owe us 30 grand. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. And then finally, a pretty buzzword topic is turning 100% into 100% P&T. It's not as common today. And I think that's due to an OIG report, but it definitely still happens where those who are 100% scheduler just can't meet that P&T mark. And people will always say, well, what can I do to apply for P&T? It's like, well, we're going to cover that. Okay. So jumping back to the very beginning, Jason, when we talk about medication affecting the VA disability, let's start with the good, okay? Usually I have a bad mindset and I just want to dig deep into the bad, Let's start with the good, and then we'll kind of transition from there.
All right, good. Well, this is, again, look, this is the strangest world that we live in here in the VA disability space, because everything bad is good and everything that's good is bad, right? So, hey, hallelujah, I've healed 100%. Great. Now you're at 0%. Or, oh man, that condition got worse. Great. I'm getting an increase. Right. So it's always a weird kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth, and a lot of conflicting thoughts. With that being said, let's just, for an example, say that your medication that you're taking is, stabilizing your condition. Right. So it's not as bad as without, which is good for you. And the problem may come that medication may have certain kind of collateral damage effects, right? Creating secondary conditions for you, in which then you would want to apply for additional VA compensation. Now, directly from the 38 CFR, it's a small little snippet here, Clay. I'm going to read it so I can get your thoughts as well. And just so we can let people know that we're actually not making things up. It's actually here. So according to the 38 CFR 3.310 Bravo, veterans may be eligible for compensation for secondary service-connected medication side effects. Because, look, sometimes people think, well, that just sounds like too good to be, like, you can just keep snowballing all of this stuff. Yep, you can currently. But guess what? The VA can change their rules, and they do. And we've already seen them change things in a negative aspect. So if you have any secondary conditions that resulted from your medication, you might want to take advantage of that if you're not already at an appropriate level of compensation. So it goes on here, Clay, to say secondary service connection claims are for conditions that develop after service but are related to a service-connected condition. Some common side effects may include erectile dysfunction, which pushes you over to SMC, and gastrointestinal, I can't even say it, gastro issues, right? So, which again, I mean, these can be some decent ratings that come out of that stuff, and it's important that you recognize it. My suggestion, Clay, is when you have some free time, Google search side effects, secondary conditions, whatever kind of different ones, different terminologies, and your medication. So you can see, oh, people who take this medication often have these problems. And you can kind of self-assess and go, you know what, I might actually have that and I've just dealt with it. Or I do have that. I never knew that it was tied to this. And then you can go to your doctor and start having that conversation and move forward with the secondary at that point. Clay, your thoughts?
Oh yeah, so the secondary to medication, one, I'm not going to say it's a slam dunk claim because it's absolutely not. Okay, you still have to provide the nexus. The nexus is still medical in nature, but it's tied to current diagnosis to medication, which is generally a lot easier than all the other secondary conditions. Okay, there's two that come to mind outside of erectile dysfunction. ED is probably the number one most commonly claimed secondary to medication, specifically mental health medication. The other two that come to mind that I've seen is gabapentin, and that would be sleep apnea secondary to gabapentin for like weight gain. And there's tons of other correlating factors there. And the other one I'm very familiar with is urinary frequency from hypertension medication. Because you have high blood pressure, you might have some kidney issues, some heart issues. You have to flush your system out. And so in the medical world, they're going to give you medication to flush your system out. What does that look like? It means at nighttime, you're going up to pee 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And in the 38 CFR criteria for urinary frequency at 40%, I believe it's 10, 20, 40, it talks about, 5 times a night. I don't remember the number exactly. You can Google 38 CFR for urinary frequency. But if you get up to pee at night, and there's also a daytime criteria, that's a 40% secondary service connection on hypertension, which, by the way, hypertension on meds is more than likely, there's a pun there, going to be 0%, right? Because it's controlled by that medication. But go ahead.
Right. Yeah. And great point. So the underlying message that Clay just sent you is sometimes the service connected condition is going to be a low value claim. But guess what? Low value claims are important, right? Because they can help you get those secondaries that then are really kind of considered in that high value claim bucket, which is why both of us hate talking about high value claims, because every claim is equally important in different ways. There is another section. I just wanted to read 2 sentences out of this, just again to double down on the VA's stance on this specific subject. So it says here, according to benefitsva.gov. Okay, so that's the one of their sites, right? The benefits.va.gov. Medication management for a service-connected disability that can be treated outside of hospitalization. It says here that veterans may be eligible for additional compensation if they experience side effects from medication used to treat a service-connected condition. So again, just doubling down on the fact that you can file for secondary condition for issues that result from medication for your service-connected condition. Huh. Boy, that's a lot. So it's definitely follow the bouncy ball thing going on. And I'll tell you that a lot of people miss the boat with secondaries. And sadly, there's a lot of information out there, Clay. I'm sure you agree. I mean, you've done videos on your channel, the CivDiv. I've done them on my channel, Veterans Info Tab, on, the value of a secondary condition. And I think that sometimes all of us in this group of people pushing out information, a lot of times it's very high level secondary condition. Go after your secondaries. My bad knee is, now messed up my hip, right? So it's mostly muscular skeletal type stuff is what they're usually talking about when it comes to secondaries. So I'm really glad that we're bringing the medication aspect as really the focal point on this specific avenue. So back to you, Clay.
Oh yeah, there's one last thing I'll bring up, and then we're gonna go ahead and reverse that and talk about why this is bad. Um, you had mentioned something, and everyone needs to understand, because something I hear all the time is, the VA prescribed me a CPAP, but then they denied my sleep apnea claim. It's like, okay, well, you had the current diagnosis, but you totally missed the in-service event. And I'm making that assumption, okay, assuming you went direct, meaning the medication that you receive, although it came from the VA, it still has to treat that service-connected disability. So if you're 50% or above, your healthcare is free. So if you go take mental health medication, but you're not rated for mental health, you're gonna probably, just to be real with you, you're probably gonna get erectile dysfunction and female sexual arousal disorder on the female side of the house. But if your mental health is not service connected, there's no claim, right? It has to be service connected. That's not
Yeah.
the bad piece. The bad piece is a lot worse. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. Before we get to the bad,
Yeah.
because this is a great segue into bad, right? Is this kind of this fuzzy area? You really brought a great point, Clay, and I'm so glad you did, because I probably, like you, have heard many people say, like that example, right? That, oh, well, I went to the VA, they prescribed me a CPAP. Of course, I have sleep apnea. I can't believe I was denied. So you can overlay that scenario over any condition. Just because you go to the VA and the VA acknowledges any conditions with you, right? You can be seen for anything, right? It doesn't mean that the VA is saying that that's a service-connected condition. Remember that VHA, the Healthcare Administration, is taking care of you like a doctor, right? I mean, they are doctors, right? So it's a medical situation. So they're taking care of you regardless, typically, of what your service-connected conditions are. You can go there for your shoulder, your foot, your ingrown hair, whatever it is. So you're there. The VBA, Veterans Benefits Administration, is focused on your service-connected conditions and your secondary conditions, right? That's what they're focused on. So the two don't align exactly, because you're going to be seen for non-service connected conditions by the VA, and there's no correlation between the VHA diagnosing you with 30 conditions and those 30 conditions being service connected. No, not at all. So your point of, even if you have a diagnosis from the VA specifically, you still have to create that nexus, that link between the service connected condition and your time in service in a way of either that it manifested during your time in service or that it is a result of your time in service in some way. And then you would then file your claim and go from there. So anyway, I know I just doubled down on what you said, but I think that is really important, because, you hear it a lot and people get confused because it's like, well, the VA wouldn't be treating me if I wasn't service connected for it. And I can't believe, or it's the same thing, Clay, like when doctors will say, wow, your condition sure got worse, man. You're going to be seeing an increase. And then you go away for a year and you're like, well, I've never gotten my increase. I thought it's the VA. They're putting me in for an increase. No.
Oh yeah.
Doctor's not doing anything for you. He's just trying to have some sort of quirky bedside manner because he knows that you're service connected for it, and probably just throwing out hints to you to go and file a claim for an increase. And look, the doctors, by the way, now that I'm down the rabbit hole, don't even really understand what the rating schedule is. They're not looking at the VBA's rating schedule, right? Unless it's a CMP, right? So your regular traditional VA doctor is not in tune exactly with what VBA is looking for. So just keep that in mind. All right.
Oh yeah.
Back to you, Clay, for your wonderful bad news that you love to sprinkle everywhere.
Oh yeah. So the bad news on medication. Medication can be great for secondaries. Yes, it can be bad because medication by the CFR, not by me, by 38 CFR, by VA standards and policies and regulations. If your medication lowers your symptoms, which by the way is good, right? Healthcare is important. Symptoms are bad, but it's that good bad that you had explained earlier, right? It's like, yes, I got PTSD. Shit, I got PTSD, right? Because now you're going to be service connected, assuming, but now you not only you, but your family's got to deal with whatever comes with that, right?
Right.
And that's not something that goes away. So If medication lowers those symptoms, the VA is supposed to evaluate the veteran from the perspective of you being able to work. That's why the disability word is in VA disability compensation. As much as we hate it, that is the standard of disability. That's what kind of sets the percentages for every single rating that we all share, right? And so I'm going to quote this. It says, from the point of view of the veteran seeking work and accurately reflect the elements of disability present. Now, the issue is it's extremely subjective. Okay. How does one rater, not even a rater, how does one C&P examiner determine, oh, this medication is actually helping, or this medication is just kind of subsidizing, right? Or suppressing those symptoms? It's extremely hard. Honestly, it's way over my head. That's definitely some medical field stuff that they're going to go through during the C&P exam. But the point is, if you take medication, yes, it's supposed to lower your rating. I think the greatest example of that is hypertension. Hypertension is serious. Okay. That is a you're going to die type disability, which absolutely sucks. And so you need medication. There is no, let me not take my medication for a month and then go have this increased C&P exam. You're going to run the risk of heart failure and all kidney conditions, and it just goes south from there, I promise you. So medication is extremely important, and that's going to result in that 0% rating. One thing I do want to pull up, Jason, and I actually am going to share my screen here, is this verbiage. So this is the proposal for mental health. And I know we've covered this many times, but what I want to show everyone is it talks specifically about the proposal for mental health and how medication is going to give veterans a lower rating, so to speak. Okay. So, general rating for mental health disorders would consider any ameliorating, which just means to get better. Okay. So, any effects that have gotten better of medications prescribed for a mental disorder. And it goes on and on. This is the 38 CFR code that you can go ahead and look up, 38 CFR 4.2. In other words, if a veteran were receiving medication for mental disability, VA would rate only the disabling symptomology that exists after the better effect ameliorative of medication are taken into account. Meaning, if your medication makes you better, which is a good thing, now it's a bad thing as far as VA disability compensation. I know that sucks. I don't even know how I'm gonna pass it to you because I still need to gather my thoughts on what I feel about this, because I'm kind of in the crosshairs.
Well, let me jump in then. So here's the thing. It's already like that. Any condition that you get rated for that has a future examination date, the VA is presuming in a negative, depending on how you look at it, in a negative way, compensation-wise for you, that with proper treatment, medication, whatever it is, physical therapy, whatever, whether it's mental health is a big one that you never get static out the gate. They're not going to go mental health. Oh, you're whatever percentage you're static. You're not going to get any better. No, they go, we're going to see you back here. And then we're going to make a determination on where you fall based on treatment. Same thing with, the old GERD rating. I don't know how the new one is working out, but with the old GERD rating where they matched it up against hiatal hernia, once you got rated for GERD, they would push you out for a future exam to see how your Prilosec or whatever you're taking is managing your symptoms and so forth. So the way I think about it is any condition that has a future exam, the VA is then going, okay, from this date to this future exam date, we're going to be watching to see if there's any improvements. Why? Well, because if you improve, we're going to reduce you. So that's exactly what they're talking about here. And they do it currently for mental health. They're going to continue to do it for mental health. There's a handful of conditions that it just is what it is. The only time that won't happen for a future examination is if you are the lowest rating for that rating schedule. So if the rating schedule starts off at 10% and they rate you at 10%, they're not going to set a future exam because you're already the lowest rating that they can possibly give you. They're not going to take away your rating because you are service connected for it. So that's the only time you'll bypass that for a condition that would normally have a future exam. The other reason why they would, Clay, is if you had, let's just say, 6 conditions, and 5 of those conditions took you to 100% and they were all static. Now you're 100% permanent in total, but you had that one other condition that, let's say there would have been a future exam, but they're like, even if you were a 0% for that other condition, it doesn't change your other ones being up to 100%. So they'll just negate that one and say no future exam needed on that because it doesn't change your overall rating. So all that to say, and I'm going to kick it back to you, is that the way to know if the VA is watching your medication to see if they're going to reduce you is if you have a future exam. In other words, your condition's not deemed static by the VA. We'll kick it back over to you, Clay.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put myself in the seat of I'm a veteran who hasn't filed mental health yet. Let's fast forward. I do think this is gonna be final next year of 2025, summertime next year probably. That's my personal opinion. So I'm putting myself right there. It's summer of 2025, and I've never filed for mental health. I'm gonna file for it. And all of a sudden, people are talking about medication and mental health. And what I find weird is technically speaking, the VA is already doing this. However, the insert into the proposal is kind of like, hey, we're really going to do this, right? There's really no reason to put it into the proposal if it's already a 38 CFR code. That's my number one worry here, personally. But if I am at that new veteran in summer 2025, this is final, and I'm making that up, by the way. What does this make me think? Well, I go to healthcare, which is important, right? I'm having trouble at home. I have some domestic violence issues. I got irritability, PTSD. I'm beating my wife, right? I mean, whatever is going on, and that's a very serious, issue. My psychiatrist gives me medication, and now I'm like, whoa. I want 70%. I'm not taking that. That's what I fear most about this thing specifically. It's the same thing as the Major Richard Starr Act. You're at 14 years. Do I just suck it up and not go to medical because I don't want to lose that DOD retirement? It's the same issue, and I just think that's
there's some conflicting things. Yeah,
we'd be lying to ourselves if that's not a thought in a veteran's mind.
Absolutely.
That's my number one concern. Well, I guess my number 2 concern is, one, why is it in the proposal to begin with if it's already doing it? And then 2, that healthcare piece. That's really my thoughts. I don't even know where to go from that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that if they don't put it in there, then it's not in there.
Yeah.
Because this is the new rating schedule for mental health. So they can't not have it in there because then it's not applicable anymore. So I think that they have to put it in there, and whoever wrote it up. I agree with you 1,000%, Clay, that and I think that it's an awareness piece, right? So I think that as people are aware, right, it's a double-edged sword, right? We want to spread awareness, but then that awareness then creates, oh, well, here I go. Do I take the blue pill or the red pill, right?
Yeah.
So it is a scary situation, and I think that absolutely the way that the VA is structured for disability, I mean, it would be a big change to change how it currently is, but it perpetuates, is that the right word? The veterans kind of almost self-demise, right? So like, I don't want to take that because I don't want to lose my rating, because now I'm financially sound with this. If this goes away, I'm now living under a bridge. So self-preservation is big for people, and they're going to make a decision that keeps the roof over their head and put their body last. I mean, that's the military trained us that way, right?
Mhm.
Sacrifice your body for the greater good. Move on, rub some dirt on it, right? Okay, cool. I'll just continue that mindset. I'll just rub some dirt on it. I'll drink a little of this or some of that, and I'll just kind of push through and self-treat and disappear for days on end and not go to work and get fired and then have to find a new job. And that's just what I'll do until finally I'm permanent and total. And even then I'm scared to do anything because of all the fear out there about the VA sneaking after you to reduce you. So, you know, man, this is really a deep subject, and I don't know how deep I'm willing to get into it right now on this specific video, because this is a whole video by itself, and really we should have some super specialized guest in on this one, because I truly do think that that the VA is putting veterans at a higher risk by the way that it's currently set up. And that's kind of how I'm going to leave it. Back to you.
I totally agree. And that's medication, right? There's the good, there's the bad. The good is bad, the bad is good. Welcome to VA Disability Compensation. Thank you for your service, right? Transitioning into every single person who can help you with your VA claim. We can just fly through this, Jason. I'm going to start with
your mom.
My picture perfect. If your mom's a VSO, sure. Which one of my friend's moms was a VSO. And so whenever he was like, hey, my mom's going to help me file, I was like, dude, that's not a good idea. He's like, oh, she's a VSO. I was like, never mind. Okay.
Right. Never mind. Great idea. Good.
But my picture perfect, if someone files their claim and it hits two of the people who can help you, is one, yourself. I would put yourself as number one always. And then two, a VSO. That would be my preferred method of filing a claim. What do I mean by that? I'm going to really understand my evidence. What I'm not going to do is hop on va.gov, answer the questions, type in lower back, boom, submit the claim, right? That has to be done at some point, but that's not what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do first is, okay, what is my evidence of my back? Because I need to understand what my evidence is for the future, because when I go talk to the C&P examiner, now I can regurgitate my evidence. I say, well, in 2011, I was seen from my back. And the C&P examiner, who, by the way, 9 times out of 10 did not look at your records from 2011, can now say, oh, was that 2011? Okay. And then they go through your health assessment, your PDHA, whatever record that was, and you pretty much walk the examiner onto your evidence. That's my picture perfect method. Understand your evidence, then go to a VSO and say, hey, I want to submit, bam, 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 bam. So now you have that VSO that simply does the paperwork. There is no figuring you out, although they could, if you miss something, they could definitely double tap that. And it also gives you a kind of window into VBMS. So even if, here's an example, I would consider myself a VA disability expert, right? If I filed a claim, I would file by myself. I would do it online. Not an issue for me. I can use va.gov. I can understand my evidence. I'll do it by myself. I would still go sign a 2122, which is a power of attorney, with the VSO, just because they have access. They might be able to tell me my C&P exam results. They might be able to tell me where my claim is. There's a few other things. It depends on how busy they are as well. But that's my preferred method. So, Jason, I'm going to leave it at that. I hit filing yourself and using a VSO, but feel free to add on or continue.
So I have chickens laying eggs.
Nice. It's my favorite part of doing Veterans Daily.
Welcome to my life, man. I mean, this is my life. Here I am with just chickens everywhere. By the way, for those that don't know, we got 4 chickens because we wanted to have some eggs. Thought I was getting 4 hens. I got 3 hens and a rooster. And so he'll crow whenever. Anyway, so I'll try to push through, and you just got to listen to that in the background. It's very soothing. No. So VBMS, first of all, for those that don't know, is the Veterans Benefits Management System, VBMS. That's what the VA uses with your claim. And yes, it is important to be able to peek into it every once in a while. And that's why using a VSO, in my opinion as well, is vital. I'm on the same page as Clay, and I think that that's actually, to kind of go way back now in time, one of the reasons why we really kind of came together. We have a lot of the same viewpoints and a lot of the same beliefs when it comes to doing this stuff. So a lot of the things you're going to hear we agree on. So anyway, with that, yes, so I'll give you my kind of the same kind of thing, maybe in a few different words. So number one, as soon as you decide and think, you know what, I think I'm going to file a claim on X, Y, or Z, what I envision is, okay, intent to file. So first thing you do is your intent to file. You're either going to call it in to the VA on the 800 number, because that's super easy. If you call it in on the VA's phone number, or you start a claim online, but then back off, so you can start the claim, then go away, and then somebody else can finish it for you. That just initiates the intent to file. You can print an intent to file out and you can mail it in, right? So you got 15 different, well, not really, you got a few different choices. But that's important. Get your intent to file in, because it takes the pressure off. Now you don't need to fly through things. You've preserved your effective date and thus back pay. Now what you need to do is you need to really, like Clay said, and I'm 100% on board, you need to have ownership on this. You need to take the bull by the horns, or the chicken by the throat, and really go through it and understand what you can have that's service connected. If you do not have your medical records, order them. SF 180, standard form 180. Order your medical records from your time in service. There could be some nuggets in there that you can find where you talked about signs or symptoms of conditions. That's a very important piece as you're establishing your nexus. You don't necessarily have to have been diagnosed in service. You can find in-service events. Maybe there was you rolled a Humvee, or maybe something happened, and you can point to that with your current doctor to have them write your Nexus letter. Or maybe your MOS was something that, you know, maybe you're sniffing jet fuel all day, right? Yeah. And that has some sort of a consequence to it. Those are things that you can pull out of your records. You can pull out any sort of medical stuff that you have, obviously, where maybe you self-attested to certain things. So you're building that kind of list of documentation that you're going to need to provide that nexus. Next, you're going to go through the schedule of ratings for all of those conditions. Okay, this is important because you want to start speaking the VA's language. Your doctor also needs to speak the VA's language. It's not necessary, but it makes it a lot easier for the rater who's not a doctor to go, oh, it's the same words. Okay. Otherwise, they have to Google search, translate, whatever they do to figure out where you fall. So what I would do is I would then take all of my ratings with the schedule of ratings for each one of where I kind of think I fall, take that to my doctor, be seen, diagnosed, have all that stuff in place in my medical records with my current doctor. And ideally, I would be able to print off a DBQ. Some doctors will, some won't, just depends. Print off the public-facing DBQ, have my doctor complete each one of those with the words from the rating schedule. So it's an easy match for that VA rater. Now you've done your homework. You know where you're going to fall on that rating schedule. You're going to keep that information in a little file somewhere with you from the rating schedule for each one of your conditions. You're going to then work with your accredited veteran service officer, a veteran rep, who will then be able to help you file that claim. You're bringing all that stuff to them. I'm filing for these 8 things. Bam, here's all the evidence for these 8 things. They put it all together. Like Clay said, they may go, hey, you missed this, you need that, you need a dot here, a cross there. Or do you have any of these secondary conditions that are often associated with this? Or whatever, right? So it's a good second set of eyes. Bam, they get it filed for you. And now you're ready for the CMP exam with all that schedule of rating stuff. And if there's any issues along the way, that VSO can chime into VBMS and take a look. There's also phone numbers that they can call to the VA and give little pokes or inquire what's going on with your file. They can also be there in the event that you get a denial or you don't get a favorable decision, they can be on the call with you. If you do a higher level review with that informal conference, they can be on that call with you as well. So kind of the same best case scenario claims process so far. There are other people though, Clay, that can help you. Let's hear what you got.
Oh yeah, I'll go ahead and cover accredited attorneys and claims agents, and I want you to start with claims consulting companies, because if I start, it's just gonna go down real fast. So starting with attorneys, which one I am a fan of attorneys. However, they're not always needed. In fact, they should not be needed, right? The only reason attorneys exist is because the VA is not doing what the VA is supposed to do. Fact, okay? Same thing like a higher level review. A higher level review would not exist if the VA did what they were supposed to do. So there is a time and place for an attorney. And I always boil it down to 3 things an attorney really, really stands out from everyone else. One is a Q, a clear, unmistakable error. I've seen people get back pay all the way from 1995. Even if a 10% increase from 1995 to now, where that's 10 to 20, 90 to 100 would be insane. Okay. I've seen some absolutely huge, like 173,000. I've seen one that was 650 grand. And it's just like, whoa. Okay. No one else is doing that except for the attorney. That's really where they are using 38 CFR, the M21 TAC 1, and then case law to really look at, hey, here's what happened in your situation. Okay. Now I want to be very clear, pun there. Qs are very rare, right? So it's not like every single person from 1995 can go ahead and get a Q. It's very rare, but that's one thing they'll shine in. Another aspect attorneys shine in are supplemental appeals, especially when the veteran has evidence from service and they have the current diagnosis, but for whatever reason, the nexus could not be made by the examiner. Attorneys could really, really combat the rationale the examiner gave. So an example of that, let's say you're going sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is secondary to PTSD. You'll see in a lot of rationales where examiners will say, hey, sleep apnea, there's no evidence or journals that states causation from sleep apnea. There's definitely correlation, but not causation. And that's it. An attorney will go, okay, but where did it come from? You can't just say it's not PTSD, because the burden of proof is not without a shadow of a doubt, right? It's at least as likely, 50-50. So if you're going to say sleep apnea is not aggravated or stems from the PTSD, well, where does it come from? And the attorney can really battle that and kind of pull the thread to get to that at least as likely burden of proof. That's really where they're going to shine. And then the third thing they're going to shine is just back pay. Effective dates, probably, I'm willing to bet my life that the number one thing the VA gets wrong are effective dates. Okay, if you do a supplemental appeal, you have the within 1 year, you do you submit that supplemental appeal within that 1 year time frame. What generally happens is the VA says, hey, we received this claim over here, October 2024, that's going to be the intent to file date. And they totally missed the denial in the original intent to file, which, by the way, could have been, years ago, depending on what that claim looks like. So that's really where attorneys are going to shine. Jason, I'm going to kick it over to you for any thoughts on attorneys, and then go ahead and transition into claims consulting companies, my absolute favorite topic of all time.
That's very true. Very true. So with attorneys, claims agents, that type of stuff, I'm in agreement. For the most part, you're not going to need that. An accredited veteran service officer is going to have plenty of experience to get you through most of the hurdles that you would have, even if the VA denies you up front or gives you some sort of an unfavorable decision. Because there's kind of a difference, right? A denial is like, you're not even service connected. So that's one thing that could happen with your original claim. Or they could say, hey, great, you're service connected, but you're 0%. And you could be thinking, oh, I should be 30. So at that level, I believe a VSO would do just fine, working with either a HLR, higher level review, with the informal conference, if all the information is already submitted and clearly able to identify, the contrary to their findings, right?
Mhm.
If not, the VSO would then say, you know what, I think we'd be better off with doing a supplemental. Let's get a little more evidence. Here's what I suggest, blah, blah, blah. And then they'd file that supplemental claim for you. I would even say that in some cases, and it's up to you, at the end of the day, it's all up to you and it's all your decision. Even going to the Board of Veterans Appeals, in some cases, you might still be okay with a VSO, but call an attorney, have a conversation with them, and gauge how comfortable you are with either one. If you feel ultimately more comfortable with an attorney, well, then you have that option, right? But don't. Here's my little 2 cents. Information's free. Have the conversation, do the consult with the attorney, run it past them, get their 2 cents, and then you can make an informed decision on if or if not you need them for your appeal with the Board of Veterans Appeals. So personally, I think total for me, and I may mess it up, I think I filed maybe 7 claims total. I had 2 of them that I pushed for basically reviews, and then I pushed, and one was approved, one was denied. I just did it all myself. And then the third one I pushed to the Board of Veterans Appeals, of which they ended up ruling in my favor. So, I mean, can you do it by yourself? Sure. But it's all just kind of, I think it's nice to have a VSO, somebody else in your corner, somebody to kind of, whiteboard it with, if you will, and just make sure that you're on the right game plan and you got everything going in the right direction and you know the right things to say and blah, blah, blah. So I think going with an attorney, at least getting that initial consult at the board level is probably, at least want to get a consult at that point. Yeah, so that's pretty much it with the attorney stuff. Go for it, Clay.
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing because you did make a point. I totally agree with you that you can represent yourself at the board. However, I will say this: it's not a. I think I can represent myself. I would argue veterans need to know, right? You need whatever that claim is: migraines, IBS, secondary, direct, whatever. You need to make that your business. So before you go to that board, you need to really understand your evidence. Maybe look at some other decisions that were made previously that are similar to yours. You got to be on top of your game. But I totally agree. However, I just think there's I would like to see veterans who represent themselves have a higher degree of understanding of everything with that claim and the process in general before just
Agreed.
saying, I'm
Don't
gonna
just jump
represent
into it.
myself.
Yeah.
Family lawyers get a lawyer when they get divorced, right? So it's
Right.
that tells me something.
Good point. And here's the thing: is that with the Board of Veterans Appeals, you have 3 different options. Okay, you can just have them look at what the VA's decisions were and then make their own decision. So you're not allowed to give any other information, or you can elect to supply them with additional evidence, highly suggested, or you can also select kind of the variation of here's more information, and oh, by the way, I want a face-to-face, whether virtual or in person or what have you. So you get to kind of pick your flavor there. If for some reason you feel as though the VA, I think my suggestion to folks: do what you want. Not telling you you have to do anything, but if it were me or a loved one, I would suggest at least going and getting a consult from an attorney. Let them have the overall picture of what you're dealing with, and then you can make an informed decision in that way. That's really I think the formal answer, right?
Yeah.
Is that's really what you should do. I love that you brought that up. That I think I made it this far. You've lost each time. So already. So let's keep that in mind, that your batting average isn't very high at this point. So and you're facing now an even more skilled pitcher. Now what? So anyway, all right. So let's shift over, I guess, huh, Clay?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
So consulting companies. All right. So I'm just going to give my kind of high level overview kind of thought on consulting companies. So consulting companies are not accredited with the VA. So does it mean that they're not experienced? No, not necessarily. I mean, Clay's super smart and he's not accredited. So that doesn't really,
Thank you, Jason.
take any, Clay's super smart. He's, that's what he does. He's just a smart dude. So anyway, the consulting companies have the wherewithal. They have good people, I'm sure. They have people who are looking into stuff. So, but they're not accredited with the VA. And you're going to see stuff out there that talk about accredited companies you're going to see consulting companies not accredited, like it's this huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
If you make veterans claims stuff your world, you can find out what's happening with the VA and changes that are happening and be on top of it, just like an accredited. And in fact, to be honest, probably a little bit quicker than an accredited rep. Typically, your veteran service officers and accredited reps and that stuff, they find out about it when it's getting ready to go into effect, not when it's proposed. They don't have the time to sit there and follow all that stuff. So there could be an argument to where the consulting companies may be able to kind of have a better pulse on what's going to be happening. Not that it affects you because it's not in effect yet, right? So here's one of the positives, and then I'll give you my negative on a consulting company. And I've said this before, actually, with you, Clay. I think that when you have somebody who is incentivized to find everything they can possibly find out about you that they can possibly service connect,
Mm-hmm.
you probably aren't going to leave any stones unturned, I would think. The problem, though, so that's a good thing, right? You're going to get your highest rating probably out the gate, utilizing a company like that, or you being your number one advocate, like we talked about, and you doing all that footwork, right? I mean, there's plenty of information out there. So, but I think that for the person that just has no clue, that might be advantageous for them to have somebody else figure it out for them. Although they're going to put it back on you, just so you know. They're not going to do all the footwork. They're going to put it on you to go do some homework and footwork and figure things out too. The drawback is, one, it costs a lot of money, right? So, I mean, you're talking enormous amounts of money that they would not necessarily have you pay. They're going to just not let you get, right? Because it's coming out of your future payments from VA compensation. I think that that's too much. I think there needs to be some kind of pullback on the amount of money that can be charged. And I think that also the drawback would be anybody who goes there for their first claim, right? And I know that I'm starting to go down that slippery path of all the negative things. So I'll leave it kind of high level like that, because I want you to be able to dive into it a little bit on when you should really seek out one of these companies. Because again, at the end of the day, it's the veteran's choice of where they go, who they work with, all of that. But they should be armed with the information needed and at least have some sort of a suggestion on when you shouldn't go seek these types of services, or at least have a consult, have some sort of a conversation to weigh it out to see if it makes sense. I feel like I didn't really say too much about it at all. It was a very political kind of conversation for me to just say it without saying anything. How about that? Back to you, Clay.
Yeah, I'll smack this ball as hard as I absolutely can.
I figured.
The question you posed me is difficult for me to answer, right? So the question is, when should a veteran seek a consulting claims company? I'm going to give you two answers because I'm a huge fan of tax-paying adults can do whatever it is they want to do. I don't care what that thing is. It's America, okay? And I firmly believe in choice, 1,000%, especially about VA disability claims. So I'm going to start there, right? Now, my answer to that question is never. That's the answer. I'll leave it at that, and then I'll give you the real answer, right? Because of the choice. So if I had to pick a time when a veteran should seek a claims consulting company, it would be in appeals, personally. So I would never seek a claims consulting company for an initial claim or an increase ever. That's not me saying that. It is me saying that. That's not my bias saying that. That's just looking at the numbers. Increases in the initial claims, there's nothing that they do at all. Okay. It's your evidence that really pushes the buck forward when it comes to VA disability claims. In fact, their name is not tied to your claim at all. And so there's when I say they do nothing, I literally mean they do nothing. Okay. Now, there are medical professionals that do Nexus Letters and DBQs, but that's not a claims consulting thing. There's this misconception, and I can't stand it, where people are like, well, I go to a claims company so I can I can have a doctor write my Nexus. It's like, well, why pay 5 times the increase? Why not just go to the doctor that provides the Nexus? Like, why are you, going around instead of just straightforward? So claims consulting companies do not have the monopoly on independent medical opinions or DBQs, if that's what you want to go for. But back to, against my will, when should a veteran go see a claims company? I would say appeals, specifically supplemental appeals. I think that's where the work really gets difficult, right? Whenever, okay, I was diagnosed, I have evidence from service, but it's not medical. Medical evidence, good. Evidence other than medical, not so good, right? So I have 7 deployments, right? I have a current diagnosis of a knee condition, 0 medical evidence from service, but I have 7 deployments. How do you blink that nexus? It's totally possible, but there's definitely some legwork. What a C&P exam is going to do in that instance, because they're medical professionals, they're honing in on medical evidence, but you ain't got any, right? So then you're going to have that claim get denied. And I think that scenario in a supplemental appeal, and there are thousands, I think that's where work needs to get done, where you look at statements, you look at, independent medical opinions, preferably from your provider. But let's just be real, the VA or your private insurance, there's a high chance they're not going to be able to fill that out. So if I have to give an answer, Jason, that's when I would go seek a claims company, and it hurts me to say that. Okay. Now I will say this.
I just want a $50 bet.
Yeah. I will say this. I've said this on my channel before, and I want everyone to understand where I'm coming from, because I get so much hate for saying claims companies suck. So you have no idea. No idea. People have Facebook messaged me. They Facebook messaged my wife. Just insane stuff, because I'm anti-claims company. So I'm going to say this to set the record straight. If the PLUS Act is passed, and I don't want to get too deep into it, basically it would give a cap on claims consulting companies, and they would have to work within the guidelines. I think those guidelines are going to look like attorneys. That's just my personal opinion. Yeah. But if the PLUS Act is passed, you have my word, I will become a claims consulting company, because then it's legal. Okay. So food for thought. That's a good way to give you my thoughts on claims companies. They're illegal. I'm not a fan. There's predatory practices. That's me. That's my bias. However, outside of that, because we have free choice, veterans should be able to make their own choice. I believe that. So if you want to go that route, I would recommend during appeals only. Now, if you just don't care and you want to give up 12 grand, absolutely go see a company. I wish you the best. And I'll say this, Jason, and I feel like I'm all over the place. Objectively speaking, these claims companies are extremely successful. If they weren't, they wouldn't be where they're at right now. So right. It would be wrong for anyone, even the VFW, who's the champion tip of the spear against these claims companies. it is wrong if they say that they aren't helping veterans or that they suck, because objectively they are. You can look
Right.
at the numbers. There's going to be, onesies and twosies who aren't satisfied with the service,
Yep.
especially when that bill comes. But objectively, they do help veterans. And
Right.
those
Okay.
are the facts. Those are the facts.
Yeah. You know what? And you're right. Look, here's the thing. And I've said this before too. Why are they in existence? Because there has been an extreme neglect to government paid services for veterans, period. So veterans are left to go find other sources. Okay. These companies, although albeit they charge too much to the individual veteran. Okay. And I'm all about having a cap. But who's making money? It's the company. It's not the 50 employees that work there. They're getting paid whatever, 60,000. I don't know how much they make, $60,000 a year or something, depending on where they live, right? It seems like a medium-ish pay range. So, I mean, the government's not paying for these employees, so they have to get the money from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming from you, the veteran, who's using that organization. That money then pays all the bills, keeps the lights on, pays for the building, pays for the person sitting in the chair, pays for the insurance, pays for this, their portion of the Social Security tax, pays all that stuff. The owner of the business is also making money. Who knows? I don't know. $1 million a year. Who knows? Right? So there's one person or two at the top of each one of the businesses that's making a very good living. All the employees, no, they're just employees. Okay. But again, the point is that even when it's brought down, and it's still substantial, but brought down, it's because they're not getting money from the government to orchestrate this business. So that's an important piece to think about. I also think that the thing that you said, Clay, about the not for your initial claim, I'm trying to think of another way to talk about that, because you are throwing money out the window if you utilize a paid for service for your initial claim. There's definitely enough information out there to where even if you didn't have a VSO near you, you had no accredited reps near you, you don't have a computer, well, then you want to be watching this. You don't have the ability to find somebody online, an accredited rep to help you. So you're just stuck to have to do it yourself. There is a chance that even if you're on the lower threshold of making things happen as far as your VA is concerned, that you picked up enough information to go, here's all my medical records, here's my current doctored records, here's the conditions that I think I should file for, and you push that in. Who knows? That might get you to a 30, 40, 50% rating that you didn't pay a nickel for and you got back pay on. Now, after that, then it's like, well, I've done everything I thought I could do. Then maybe at that point, it's like, okay, look, consulting company, I'm really not aware of how to do any of this. I'm lucky that I even got a 50%. Can you look and see if there's any way that I can move from 50 upward? And then give them all your stuff and let them figure it out from there, have the conversations, whatever it is. I don't know. I've never worked with one of those places or talked with them. So I think that the big thing is, there's a chance that even if you think you're screwing it up, that you're going to get something approved. And why pay money on something that you're going to get approved? The other piece, Clay, is that if you threw in an intent to file up front and you threw out there 10 different claims, right? 10 different conditions, but you screwed it up, right? Your intent to file lasted for whatever, 10 months. You filed your claim with 10 conditions. Of those 10 conditions, you got 2 approved at whatever, 30%. Mm-hmm. Then you have these other 8 and you don't know what to do. And you go to the claims consulting company and then they help you figure out those other 8. And then you file for those. Maybe they might pick up another 1 or 2 to add in there. And you file that. And now you're getting all of those. Let's just say you get some of those approved and your rating shoots up. It's going to hurt less to pay them X months worth of increase because you already had a little bit of a percentage, and you have a long back pay that you've preserved by filing a supplemental claim. So back to your point of, I think you did actually mention supplemental might be somewhere where you might have them step in. So it's going to be all within your own wherewithal and the exhaustion of any other resources, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to keep money in your pocket, right?
Oh yeah, I can spend an hour and a half talking good and bad about consulting companies, but let's go ahead and transition to the VA wants their money back. Now, Jason, if I remember, you were in the Guard, right? Not the Guard, not the Reserves.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in the Army Guard after the Marine Corps. So I always got Marine Corps. So I active duty Marine Corps, had a little break in service. Then I joined the Army National Guard, and I finished my time out there.
All right. I'm going to speak on the severance pay issue when it comes to the VA wants their money back, and if you could take the Guard and Reserve pay issue. So severance pay, a good friend of mine who was a good Marine, okay? Solid Marine at 12. The Marine Corps is very, their standards are very strict. And so at that 12-year mark, he was still an E5. He was forced out of the Marine Corps, and I hate that situation so much because he was actually a legitimate Marine, okay? Down and dirty, just he was a Marine's Marine. Well, he got severance pay of about 30 grand, and that's rounded. And eventually he would get his disability rating at 100% P&C, but you know what the VA said? They said, hey, congrats on your rating. You owe us 30 grand. So although he was awarded that VA disability rating, he had to pay back through his VA disability checks, through that DFAST audit, that severance pay. And no one realizes that until it slaps you right in the face, okay? Because I remember talking to him. He left the Marine Corps, and he's like, dude, you know, I'm single. I have no kids. I got 30 grand check. What am I going to do? I'm going to go party, do all this stuff. And at that time, I didn't know. I was still in the Marine Corps. You know, I didn't know about VA disability then. And then a few years later, he's like, hey, I had to pay all that back. And so he did get his rating, but it was a punch to the gut. It comes with DFAST audits. Retirees also have a DFAST audit themselves. So there are different, you know, severance pay situations that can occur. But yes, the VA will take their money back, and it could be, they always give you an option. If there's a debt to collect, it'll be like, hey, we're going to take $110 for the next, 36 months. Or they will give you the option to just pay it all up front in one go. Do with that what you will. You can make your own financial decisions, but pretty much it ends up being 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Just how do you want to cut that cake? That's essentially what happens. So that's severance pay, Jason. If you can go ahead and take the reserve and guard pay, or add on if I had missed anything.
Yeah, no, you're good. My other chicken's laying an egg now.
Nice.
So sorry. All right. So here we go. So no, you cannot receive both. Now here's the thing with reserves or National Guard. One of the kind of neat things about it is you can actually go get service connected with the VA during your time being a reservist. There's no benefits delivery, discharge in a certain window. You can do it whenever. And so that's exciting sometimes for people if you're not planning to stay in. Okay. If you're planning on staying in, well, then it's another story. You might want to hold off on that, keep your cards close to your chest, and try to get to that 20-year mark before you start to open up too much. So with that, you file your claim with the VA comes back. They say, great, here's you go, all that good stuff. On your forms, I believe it says, what branches did you serve in, and are you still serving? And you're saying yes. And somewhere buried in the paperwork, it says, hey, look, congratulations, here's your money. This is how much you get per month. You need to now make a decision. Would you like to waive your VA money and not get paid and just be a rated veteran? Or do you want it? And if you want it, you need to then go waive your drill pay. Mm-hmm. So you can't collect both. It's concurrent receipt, and you can't do that. There's a couple little blurbs here that I'll read to you, and then I'm going to talk a little more about it. So no, you cannot receive both reserve pay, which also includes National Guard pay, right? Reserves and National Guard. You cannot receive both reserve pay and Department of Veterans Affairs disability compensation at the same time. This is because the U.S. Code prohibits service members from receiving dual compensation while on active duty or during inactive training. This is known as concurrent receipt. If you accidentally receive a VA payment while serving in the military, you will be required to pay that money back to the VA. So the one little weird part there is, well, you can receive it if you waive your military pay. So you gotta pick one or the other. Mm-hmm. The next kind of line here is to be eligible for VA disability benefits while on drilling status or as a retiree, actually, of the reserves or National Guard. You must have served on active duty for training, or inactive duty training, and have a service-connected disability. So anyway, back to the point at hand here, which is the collecting both at the same time. I did that when I was in. So, you know, I damaged my left eye, and it was a horrible thing. It was like a golf ball. I mean, it was all lumpy and crazy, and it looked like I was looking underneath like swampy water. And everybody watching this, if you hung on here, you're going to totally get this. So mortars, right? And I can't remember now if it was a 120 or an 81, but anyway, one of the bigger ones, right? So we're going, boom, boom, boom. Something flies in my eye. Don't know what it was. Maybe it was something off of the little ring or whatever, right?
Yeah, the band, yeah.
Yeah, something flies in my eye. Bam, I get a corneal abrasion. So that sucked. I'm like, God, my eye. So it felt like I had sand like stuck in my eye. And it was just scratchy and it hurt. And whatever, tried to flush it out. Nothing happened. So then I look in the mirror when I finally, I don't have a mirror on me. And so finally I get like back to like a Humvee or something. And I kind of look in the mirror, and my eye is just like, my eyeball itself is swollen up and looks kind of like tapioca pudding. And like I said, with my left eye, just closing my right eye, looking with my left eye, it was like I was looking underneath swampy water with stuff floating around. My other eye, clear as day, blue skies, beautiful. I'm like, something's not right, man. I tell the medic, this is during the Army National Guard, I tell the medic, well, probably just get some rest, take some Motrin, and we'll check on it in the morning. Okay. The morning comes, it's not any better. It's just, it feels like it's gonna like plop out of my face. We have a PHA, a physical health assessment, coming now. And so we go to the physical health assessment, and I'm walking around with one eye shut because it's super sensitive to the light. We get to the area where it was look at the chart, the E chart with all, and it's like, I'm one eye in it. And the guy's like, can you open up your, whatever. So I do. And I'm like, I can't really see out of it right now. Nobody's saying anything to me still. I'm like, this just sucks. Finally, I get to the end where the medical person, right? The physician's assistant or whatever is going to sign the page. He could have been a doctor. I think he was like, he was probably like I think he was either a major or a lieutenant colonel. So maybe he was a doctor. So anyway, so he's there. He's like, what's up with your eye? And I show him and I tell him, he's like, where get your first sergeant? This is ridiculous. So then that whole thing happened, which is like, great, here we go. So off I go, get taken out. They give me steroids. Yeah. Hey, so then it's like heads are rolling. I go to an ophthalmologist, and they give me steroid drops, right? And they say, come back the next day. They're like, yeah, steroid drops aren't working. We got to give you a shot. So they give me a shot. They lift my eyelid up, and they give me a shot right over my eyeball. That was fun to see that needle. Anyway, all that to say is that I'm service connected for my left eye because now I have this weird thing called, it sounds fake, recurrent iritis. I got the iritis. Anyway, so I got service connected for that while I was in the Guard. And I got the paperwork, pick one or the other. Whatever, I'll let that go. So I get both. So I'm getting VA money and Guard money. That's great for about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. And then all of a sudden the VA is like, so the brakes on that, we're not sending you nothing for like 4 months. So basically they just took my whole check for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months or something like that. So it's a fun situation. Anyway, that was my long story that I wanted to share. I'm so glad that I got to.
No,
Back
that's
to you,
great.
Clay.
I think let's go ahead and push the turning 100% into PNT for next week. But I did want to add on to that. I was also in the reserves in the Marine Corps just for a year. I don't talk about it because it was during COVID. And when I say I did nothing, I mean I did nothing because it all got waived. I was a
Nice.
reservist for a year and a half. I never did a CFT, a PFT. I never did training. It was the best year of the military in my life. Okay. Now, the reason I bring that up, and it was an IMA program, individual something augmentee. That was when I was a PSYOPer. But and I'll speak for the Marine Corps. I'm sure other services have it as well. You can go to your one shop. If you're a reservist or in the Guard right now, you can go to your one shop and let them know you are receiving VA compensation, and you can completely waive your weekend check. Okay, whatever that looks like for you. Now, in my case, I didn't get a weekend check because I never did
Never
anything
weekend.
because it
Yeah,
got waived, right? It got waived. So I do have one good year in the reserve. So mark that down, brother.
that's
And
right.
then
Hardcore.
once the world came back and COVID disappeared, I had to do a CFT, and I was like, nah, I quit.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's my reserve story. So I didn't, but I say that because I didn't have to. If I did receive pay, I wouldn't have had that debt collected because I waived it. So you can do both. You can tell the VA to withhold it, which I really do not recommend. I would rather deal with any organization other than the VA. Okay. So let VA do what they're going to do. If you can go to your one shop or do it
Right,
internally, I
right.
would rather hassle with the Lance Corporal or specialist in the one versus someone on the
Right.
phone at the VA.
No, you
That's
need to
my
turn
two
my
cents.
VA benefits back on. Turn them back on. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you don't want those conversations. I get it.
Oh yeah.
I've been
But
out for 3 years now. Turn it back
yeah.
on.
Oh yeah. But that's my 2 cents. And the VA wants their money back. And when I say when the VA wants their money back, they're going to get it back. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So just be mindful of that. It is a real thing. I've seen some debt collections being like the $30,000-$40,000, and that's just not. It just sucks. It's just like I'm.
Yeah.
It's good because you got rated, but the good is bad because you got rated, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Jason, that's all I have. If you want to add anything, and then take it away.
No, man, that's it. Great episode. I appreciate everybody. We appreciate everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching us. And I think next week, Clay, let's hit that 100%. And let's also talk about, let's say, what might people like? How about debt waivers? Let's throw debt waivers in there on how you navigate that when the VA is coming after you to collect. So there's some important information there. So for those that hung on, you can look forward to that. Well, you can hold us accountable to that. We'll see if we remember. And when I say we, I mean Clay. So, all right. Thanks again so much for watching. We appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong. With Stan.
Dude, killer outro, Stan. Killer outro.
Good. It's perfect.